a medieval painting of a rainy evening in a 1248 stone castle, High Middle Ages Europe, a lone traveller wearing a wool cloak standing on a muddy path before a massive stone castle gate. Dark, cloudy sky. Rain falling over ancient stone walls. Wooden gatehouse. Realistic medieval architecture. Warm candlelight glowing from windows. Detailed historical painting style. 13th century atmosphere. A detailed oil painting depicting a High Middle Ages castle courtyard in the year 1248 European medieval stone fortress surrounded by rain. Knights and servants walking through wet stone pathways. Horses near wooden carts. Guards wearing 13th century armour. Flickering torches reflecting on puddles. Authentic medieval life scene. Classical medieval painting style. A medieval illuminated manuscript-style painting of a rainy night inside a 13th century stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Servants carrying baskets through narrow stone corridors. Damp wool clothing. Wooden beams. Candle holders on stone walls. Warm fireplace light contrasting with cold rain outside. Highly detailed historical artwork. A realistic medieval oil painting of a castle guard welcoming a traveller during a rainy night in 1248 High Middle Ages period. A stone gatehouse with heavy wooden doors. Armoured knight holding a torch. Traveller wearing a wet cloak. Rain pouring from castle towers. Moss-covered stone walls. Cinematic historical painting style. A romantic medieval painting showing the interior of a High Middle Ages castle hall during a stormy night. Year 1248, nobles and common workers gathered around a large fireplace. Wooden tables, candles, medieval clothing, stone walls covered with shadows, warm firelight, cozy atmosphere, authentic 13th century European painting. A historical fantasy painting of a 1248 European stone castle during gentle rain. High Middle Ages architecture. Tall towers covered with moss. Water flowing down rough stone surfaces. Villagers walking with wooden carts. Farmers in medieval clothing. Cloudy sky. Peaceful rainy atmosphere. Traditional medieval landscape painting style. A detailed oil painting of a medieval castle bedroom in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248, a traveller resting beside a small fireplace. Thick stone walls, wooden bed, wool blankets, candlelight, rain visible through a narrow window, realistic 13th century European interior, cozy bedtime story atmosphere. A medieval painting of a narrow stone corridor inside a 13th century castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Servants walking quietly with lanterns. Wet cloaks hanging near the entrance. Stone floors reflecting candlelight. Wooden doors. Ancient castle atmosphere. Historical realism painting style. A beautiful medieval manuscript painting showing daily life inside a High Middle Ages castle in 1248, cooks preparing food near a fireplace. Craftsmen working with tools, children walking through stone halls, animals inside the castle courtyard. Realistic medieval society. Detailed European historical artwork. A cinematic oil painting of a rainy night landscape around a 1248 stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Dark forest in the distance. Muddy roads. Farmers' fields covered in mist. Castle towers rising above the rain clouds. Medieval atmosphere. Dramatic historical painting style. A medieval painting of a castle watchman standing on a tower during a rainy night in 1248 High Middle Ages period. Armoured guard looking over misty fields, torchlight, wet stone walls, cloudy medieval sky, distant villages, authentic 13th century European fortress artwork, a detailed historical painting of a high Middle Ages kitchen inside a stone castle, year 1248 medieval cooks preparing dinner over a large hearth, wooden tables, clay pots, servants wearing linen and wool clothing, firelight illuminating stone walls, realistic medieval lifestyle painting, a cozy medieval oil painting of people gathering round a fireplace inside a 1248 castle hall, high Middle Ages Europe, knights, servants, and nobles sharing stories while rain falls outside, candles glowing, wooden furniture, stone architecture, peaceful bedtime story mood, a medieval painting of a traveller walking through a rain-soaked castle courtyard in 1248 high Middle Ages European setting. Heavy stone walls, wooden carts, horses, guards, puddles reflecting torchlight, realistic medieval clothing, atmospheric historical artwork, a highly detailed Renaissance-style medieval painting of a high Middle Ages castle interior. 13th century Europe. Narrow windows with raindrops, carved wooden furniture, stone fireplaces, hanging candles, noble family resting indoors during a storm. Authentic medieval atmosphere. A fantasy medieval painting inspired by historical High Middle Ages Europe. A peaceful rainy night in a 1248 stone castle. Ancient towers, glowing windows, wet cobblestone courtyard. Villagers and knights sheltered inside. Soft candlelight. Detailed hand-painted artwork style. A medieval illustrated manuscript painting of a 13th century castle village during rainfall. High Middle Ages period. Peasants walking through muddy roads. Stone castle overlooking the settlement, wooden houses, horses, fields covered in mist. Authentic European medieval landscape art. A realistic oil painting showing the contrast between a cold, rainy exterior and a warm medieval castle interior in 1248, High Middle Ages Europe. Traveller entering through stone doorway, fireplace glow, wet cloak, wooden furniture, candles, historical storytelling painting style. A dark atmospheric medieval painting of ancient castle halls during a rainy night in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Empty stone corridors, flickering candle flames, rain sounds outside narrow windows, old wooden doors, mysterious but cozy medieval bedtime atmosphere, a grand historical painting of life inside a High Middle Ages stone castle in 1248 Europe, knights, servants, craftsmen, and noble families living together, rain falling outside fortress walls, fireplaces burning, candle-lit rooms, medieval architecture, authentic 13th century painting style, extremely detailed artwork, a detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle interior in the year 1248, a traveller walking through a narrow passageway after entering from the rain, wet wool cloaks hanging near a wooden doorway, water drops falling from wooden beams, uneven stone floors reflecting candlelight, authentic 13th century European castle architecture, realistic historical painting style, cozy rainy night atmosphere, a medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting showing daily life inside a 1248 European stone castle, High Middle Ages period, servants carrying thick wool blankets through dark stone corridors, candles glowing on stone walls, wooden doors and medieval furniture, realistic medieval clothing, detailed historical artwork with warm and peaceful atmosphere, a classical medieval painting of castle servants working during a rainy evening in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248 workers carrying supplies through practical stone passageways, wooden shelves, storage areas, handmade tools, linen and wool clothing, authentic medieval household life, detailed European historical painting style, a realistic oil painting of a medieval storage room inside a 13th century stone castle, High Middle Ages Europe, wooden shelves filled with clay jars, herbs, tools, barrels of grain and preserved food, a servant organizing supplies by candlelight, damp stone walls, authentic medieval interior painting, a detailed medieval painting of a High Middle Ages herbal room inside a castle in 1248, European servants preparing sage, mint and rosemary, wooden containers, dried plants hanging from beams, candlelight illuminating stone walls, medieval household medicine scene, historical manuscript art style, a cozy medieval oil painting depicting castle workers preparing food during a rainy night in 1248, High Middle Ages Europe. Cooks near a large fireplace, vegetables being chopped, iron pots over flames, steam rising through the kitchen, wooden tables, stone walls, realistic 13th century kitchen atmosphere. A historical medieval painting of a busy castle kitchen in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248 cooks wearing linen and wool garments preparing a large evening meal. Open hearth fire, iron cooking tools, wooden bowls, bread preparation, authentic European medieval lifestyle, detailed oil painting style, a medieval illustrated manuscript painting of bread making inside a 13th century European castle, High Middle Ages period, bakers shaping dough beside a stone oven, sacks of grain, wooden tables, flour scattered across the floor, warm firelight, realistic medieval craftsmanship artwork, a cinematic medieval oil painting showing a High Middle Ages castle kitchen during a stormy evening. 1248 Europe, flames glowing beneath iron cookware, cooks carefully watching the fire without modern equipment, rain visible through small windows, atmospheric historical painting style, a detailed historical painting of a medieval castle storage chamber in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe, wooden barrels filled with grain and salt, imported spices in small containers, dried flowers and herbs, candlelit stone room, showing medieval trade and household preparation, realistic painting style, a beautiful medieval painting of workers resting inside a High Middle Ages castle after a rainy day. Year 1248 servants sitting near a small fireplace, sharing stories and laughter, wet roads outside, warm candlelight, simple wooden furniture, peaceful medieval evening atmosphere, a realistic oil painting of a narrow medieval staircase inside a 1248 stone castle, High Middle Ages Europe, traveller standing between different levels of the fortress, warm light coming from upper rooms, workers below continuing their tasks, ancient stone walls, detailed historical artwork, a medieval castle interior painting showing the contrast between noble and servant areas in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248, wealthy private chambers above and busy working spaces below, stone architecture, wooden stairs, candles, authentic medieval social structure, detailed European painting style, a dark atmospheric medieval painting of a rainy night corridor inside a 13th century stone castle, High Middle Ages period, empty passageways, candle holders polished by generations of hands, scratched wooden benches, repaired stone walls, mysterious but cozy bedtime story mood. A detailed medieval oil painting of a servant walking through a castle hallway carrying folded wool blankets during a rainy evening in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Damp cloak, candlelight, rough stone walls, wooden beams, realistic medieval daily life illustration. A historical medieval painting of a High Middle Ages castle kitchen garden connection. Year 1248, Europe. Servants bringing fresh herbs from a small monastery-style garden into the castle. Rosemary, mint, and sage plants. Stone walls covered with moss. Authentic medieval agricultural artwork. A fantasy-inspired but historically accurate medieval painting of a rainy evening inside a 1248 stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Hundreds of small details of daily life including cooks, servants, craftsmen, storage rooms, fireplaces, candles, and ancient stone architecture. Highly detailed hand-painted style. A medieval oil painting showing the hidden everyday life of a High Middle Ages fortress. Year 1248, workers repairing tools, preparing food, organising supplies, and maintaining the castle during a rainy night. Realistic medieval clothing. Authentic European castle environment. A cinematic historical painting of a traveller touching the cold stone wall inside a 1248 medieval castle. High Middle Ages period. Rain tapping against narrow windows. Warm firelight ahead. Ancient walls covered with centuries of memories. Emotional storytelling painting style. A grand medieval painting of a High Middle Ages European castle settling into the night in 1248. Servants finishing their tasks. Kitchens glowing with firelight. Storage rooms filled with supplies, corridors illuminated by candles, rain falling outside the fortress, authentic 13th century historical artwork, cozy bedtime history atmosphere, a detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages great hall in a 1248 European stone castle, a traveller entering from a rainy corridor, a massive fireplace glowing at the centre, long wooden tables, rough stone walls, candlelight reflecting on wooden benches, authentic 13th century architecture, warm, cozy atmosphere, historical painting style, a realistic medieval painting showing an evening gathering inside a High Middle Ages castle great hall. Year 1248 Europe. Nobles, servants, guards, and workers sitting together around wooden tables. Fireplace flames illuminating the room. Rain falling outside narrow windows. Detailed medieval clothing. Authentic historical artwork. A classical oil painting of a 13th century European castle dining hall during a rainy night. High Middle Ages period. Long wooden tables filled with fresh bread, roasted meat, vegetables, wooden cups, candles, and medieval dishes. Servants bringing food from the kitchen. Realistic historical painting style. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a great hall feast in a 1248 stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Musicians playing medieval instruments near the fireplace. Guests talking. Servants serving drinks. Tapestries on stone walls. Warm firelight. Detailed medieval social scene. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages castle hall during a stormy evening. Year 1248. A large hearth glowing brightly. Rain sounds outside, people relaxing after a long day, smoke rising gently, wooden furniture, authentic European medieval atmosphere. A detailed historical painting of medieval seating arrangements inside a 13th century castle great hall. High Middle Ages Europe. Nobles seated near the main table, servants and workers positioned around the room, showing medieval social hierarchy. Realistic clothing and architecture. Museum-quality medieval artwork. A cozy medieval painting of castle residents sharing an evening meal in 1248 High Middle Ages period. Families, workers, knights, and servants gathered around a fireplace. Fresh bread and roasted food on wooden tables. Candlelight. Gentle rain outside. Warm bedtime story atmosphere. A realistic oil painting of medieval musicians performing inside a High Middle Ages stone castle hall. Year 1248 Europe. Musicians playing lute and simple medieval instruments. People listening near the fire. Candles glowing. Tapestries decorating the walls. Authentic 13th century historical scene. A medieval painting showing a servant pouring drinks into wooden cups during a rainy evening feast in a 1248 European castle. High Middle Ages period. Wooden tables, fireplace light, medieval clothing, noble guests and workers interacting. Detailed historical illustration style. A beautiful medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages castle great hall decorated with valuable tapestries. Year 1248 Europe. Colourful wall hangings covering cold stone walls, intricate medieval designs, candles and fireplace creating warmth. Realistic historical interior artwork. A detailed medieval manuscript painting of a child listening to an elder telling stories beside a castle fireplace in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Family members gathered around, workers resting nearby, rain falling outside. Emotional, cozy, medieval evening atmosphere. A historical oil painting of a tired medieval worker resting beside a great hall fireplace after a long day. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248. Rough stone walls, wooden benches, warm firelight, simple wool clothing. Realistic human moment from medieval life. A cinematic medieval painting of a castle guard relaxing inside the great hall during a rainy night in 1248. High Middle Ages Europe. Armoured knight sitting near the fire, removing his helmet, enjoying food and conversation, candles glowing. Authentic medieval atmosphere. A detailed medieval oil painting showing the contrast between the cold, rainy exterior and warm interior of a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248. Storm outside stone windows. Fire burning inside the great hall. People gathering around tables. Realistic European medieval artwork. A medieval historical painting of a grand fireplace inside a 13th century stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Flames casting shadows across rough stone walls. Wooden tables nearby. Candles creating soft pools of light. People enjoying a peaceful rainy evening. Detailed oil painting style. A realistic medieval painting of castle residents adapting to life without modern technology in 1248 High Middle Ages period. People creating comfort with candles, fire, food, music, and conversation. Stone hall interior. Rain outside. Authentic historical lifestyle artwork. A fantasy-inspired but historically accurate medieval oil painting of a rainy night celebration inside a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Glowing fireplace. Medieval feast. musicians, tapestries, wooden furniture, knights and servants together, highly detailed hand-painted style, a medieval illustrated manuscript painting of a castle great hall becoming quiet after dinner, High Middle Ages Europe, empty wooden plates, fading candles, musicians playing soft melodies, glowing embers in fireplace, people preparing to leave, peaceful nighttime atmosphere, a cinematic historical painting of a traveller sitting near the edge of a 1248 castle great hall, High Middle Ages period, observing medieval life around the fire, rain tapping on the roof, people sharing stories, warm candlelight, emotional storytelling artwork, a grand medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages European stone castle at night. Year 1248, the great hall glowing warmly while rain falls outside, people finishing their evening gathering, candles shining through windows, ancient fortress surrounded by storm clouds. Authentic 13th century historical painting style, a detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages castle courtyard at night in the year 1248, European stone fortress surrounded by gentle rain, wet cobblestone reflecting lantern light, wooden doors beneath stone arches, traveller wearing a wool cloak entering the courtyard, authentic 13th century architecture, atmospheric historical painting style, a realistic medieval painting showing a rainy courtyard inside a 1248 stone castle, High Middle Ages Europe, dark wet paving stones, small pools of rainwater reflecting torchlight, tall stone towers disappearing into mist, wooden walkways, peaceful stormy night atmosphere, detailed historical artwork, a medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of castle workers during a rainy evening in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248, stable workers checking horses, servants carrying firewood, stone courtyard, wooden structures, lanterns glowing through the rain. Authentic medieval daily life scene. A cinematic oil painting of a High Middle Ages castle stable during a rainy night in 1248 Europe. Groom brushing a horse inside a wooden stable. Horses resting on fresh straw. Wet leather equipment. Wooden beams. Warm lantern light. Realistic medieval atmosphere. A detailed historical medieval painting of horses inside a 13th century European castle courtyard. High Middle Ages period. Stable workers caring for valuable war horses and transportation animals. Rain falling outside. Stone walls, wooden stalls. Authentic medieval animal care scene. A cosy medieval oil painting of a castle groom softly speaking to a horse during a rainy night in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Gentle human-animal connection. Candle lantern. Wet stable floor. Straw bedding. Realistic, emotional, historical artwork. A medieval painting of a tool storage area inside a High Middle Ages castle courtyard. Year 1248 Europe. Wooden racks holding hammers, ropes, buckets, farming tools, craftsman's equipment, rain dripping from wooden roofs, detailed medieval craftsmanship artwork, a realistic oil painting showing medieval workers repairing tools inside a rainy 1248 castle courtyard. High Middle Ages period. Blacksmith equipment, wooden work tables, worn tools being restored, stone walls, lantern light, authentic 13th century European life, a detailed medieval manuscript painting of everyday castle workers in the High Middle Ages, year 1248 craftsmen, cleaners, messengers, stable workers, and servants moving through a rainy fortress courtyard, showing the hidden daily life behind the castle walls. A historical medieval oil painting of a traveller touching an old wooden post inside a 1248 castle courtyard. High Middle Ages Europe. Rain falling softly. Ancient wood surface showing years of use. Stone walls. Lantern glow. Emotional storytelling painting style. A medieval painting of symbolic medieval objects inside a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe, carved wooden charms near a doorway, handmade tools, plants, traditional household items, candlelight, showing medieval beliefs and traditions, detailed historical artwork, a cinematic medieval oil painting of a castle courtyard transformed by a rainy night storm. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248. Towers covered in mist, wet stone walls, lanterns flickering, empty wooden benches, peaceful, mysterious atmosphere, realistic historical painting, a detailed medieval painting of an empty workers' resting area inside a 13th century castle courtyard. High Middle Ages Europe, wooden benches under a covered walkway, rain falling beyond the roof, quiet nighttime atmosphere, stone fortress background, authentic medieval artwork, a realistic oil painting of a traveller sitting beneath a covered walkway in a rainy medieval castle courtyard. Year 1248. High Middle Ages Europe. Listening to rain, wind between towers, distant stable sounds, lantern lighting, peaceful bedtime story atmosphere, a medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a living High Middle Ages castle community. 1248 Europe. Nobles absent while ordinary workers maintain the fortress during rain. Servants, craftsmen, animals, and caretakers creating daily life. Detailed historical illustration, a grand medieval oil painting of a 1248 European stone castle courtyard during a stormy night. High Middle Ages architecture, massive towers covered in fog, rain softening the edges of the fortress, wooden stairs, glowing lanterns, atmospheric historical landscape painting. A realistic medieval painting showing the relationship between humans and animals in a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 stable workers caring for horses, dogs nearby, livestock areas, rainy courtyard, stone walls, authentic medieval economy scene. A dark atmospheric medieval oil painting of a narrow staircase along a castle courtyard wall. In 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Rainwater flowing down stone steps, flickering lantern beside the entrance, mist surrounding towers, mysterious historical castle atmosphere, a detailed medieval painting of a rainy night inside a High Middle Ages fortress. Year 1248, the castle appearing like a sleeping ancient creature. Silent courtyard, wet stones, empty pathways, towering walls, soft silver-grey sky, poetic historical artwork, a cinematic historical oil painting of a traveller leaving a rainy 1248 castle courtyard and returning indoors. High Middle Ages Europe, wooden door closing behind, warm castle light ahead, storm outside, stone walls holding centuries of memories, cozy medieval bedtime story style, a detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle staircase in the year 1248 European fortress interior, a traveller climbing worn stone steps with one hand on a cold stone railing, thick walls, narrow passages, flickering candlelight, rain sounds outside, authentic 13th century architecture, historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing the upper corridors of a 1248 European castle. High Middle Ages period. Narrow stone hallway lined with wooden doors. Candles glowing on walls. Noble chambers beyond the doors. Quiet nighttime atmosphere. Beeswax scent and old wood details. Detailed historical artwork. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a high Middle Ages castle upper floor at night. Year 1248 Europe. Servants walking quietly through candlelit corridors, wooden doors, stone walls, shadows from fireplace smoke, authentic medieval daily life scene. A cinematic oil painting of a noble chamber inside a 13th century stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248. Large wooden bed covered with layered fabrics. Thick curtains around the sleeping area. Candles, wooden furniture. Warm firelight. Realistic medieval interior painting. A detailed historical medieval painting of a high Middle Ages bedroom in a European castle. 1248 period. A noble bed with decorative fabrics, wooden chest beside the bed, candles burning on a table, stone walls, wool blankets, authentic medieval comfort and status symbolism. A realistic medieval oil painting showing the preparation of a castle bedroom during a rainy night in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Servants arranging blankets, tending a fireplace, lighting candles, repairing fabrics, demonstrating the effort required for comfort. Detailed historical artwork. A medieval painting of a 13th century noble household chamber. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 expensive fabrics, embroidered coverings, wooden furniture, decorated chest. Personal belongings showing wealth and social status. Candlelit stone room. Authentic European historical style. A detailed medieval manuscript painting of a wooden chest inside a 1248 castle chamber. High Middle Ages Europe. Chest containing folded clothing, jewellery, letters, and personal objects. Dried lavender and herbs nearby. Candlelight illuminating stone walls. Historical lifestyle artwork. A cosy medieval oil painting of a high Middle Ages bedroom with scented herbs and flowers. Year 1248 Europe. Wooden chest with lavender bundles. Wool fabrics, candles, old wooden furniture, peaceful rainy night atmosphere. Authentic medieval painting style. A cinematic medieval painting of a traveller standing beside a narrow castle window during a rainy night in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Looking over dark fields and the courtyard below. Raindrops on stone window frame. Candlelight behind. Emotional historical artwork. A realistic medieval oil painting of a high Middle Ages castle room overlooking a rainy landscape. Year 1248 Europe. Small courtyard below, misty fields beyond the fortress, storm clouds, narrow window, peaceful medieval nighttime atmosphere, a detailed historical painting of ordinary medieval life inside a noble chamber. High Middle Ages Europe, 1248 period. Comb on a wooden table, candle beside writing materials, folded garments, personal objects showing daily routines before sleep, authentic medieval interior, a medieval illustrated manuscript-style artwork showing a person resting beside a castle window during a rainy evening in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Listening to water against stone walls, candle flame flickering, quiet reflective mood, detailed medieval painting, a realistic oil painting of a high Middle Ages castle corridor at night, Year 1248 candle flames casting moving shadows across rough stone walls. Wooden doors, silent passageways. A traveller walking deeper into the fortress. Atmospheric historical artwork. A dark but cosy medieval painting of upper castle chambers during a rainy night. High Middle Ages Europe. Thick stone walls, narrow hallways, flickering candles, fireplace smoke rising from below, mysterious yet peaceful 13th century atmosphere. A historical medieval oil painting showing the contrast between noble private rooms and working castle life in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Servants carrying messages through upper corridors, noble chambers nearby, connected household activities, realistic social history artwork. A detailed medieval painting of a person preparing for sleep inside a High Middle Ages castle chamber. Year 1248 Europe. Folding clothing, lighting candles, arranging bedding, wooden furniture, stone walls, rain outside. Authentic bedtime historical scene. A cinematic historical painting of a 13th century European castle interior during a rainy night. High Middle Ages period. Empty corridors filled with candlelight. Every doorway suggesting another person's story. Ancient stone architecture, emotional storytelling style. A medieval oil painting of a traveller walking through a quiet upper castle passage in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Candles flickering beside stone walls. Rain echoing outside. Open doorway revealing another chamber. Detailed historical fantasy realism. A grand medieval painting of the private upper levels of a High Middle Ages stone castle at night. Year 1248 Europe. Noble chambers. Servants preparing rooms. Candlelit corridors. Rain falling outside ancient walls. Authentic 13th century historical artwork. Cozy bedtime history atmosphere. A detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages knight's chamber in a 1248 European stone castle. A knight preparing for sleep beside a small fireplace. Shield resting against the wall. Helmet on a wooden table. Candles flickering. Rain outside narrow windows. Authentic 13th century interior. Historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing a knight's quiet evening routine in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248 Europe. A warrior removing his heavy outer garment, carefully arranging armour and equipment, wooden furniture, stone walls, warm firelight, peaceful rainy night atmosphere, detailed historical artwork, a medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a 13th century European knight's room, High Middle Ages period, shield, helmet, sword, leather equipment organised neatly, candles glowing on wooden tables, fireplace smoke rising, authentic medieval lifestyle illustration. A cinematic oil painting of a High Middle Ages knight sitting beside a fireplace during a rainy night in 1248 European stone castle chamber. Warrior reflecting quietly after a long day. Wool clothing, leather armour, warm candlelight, emotional historical painting style. A detailed historical medieval painting of a knight maintaining his equipment in a 1248 castle room. High Middle Ages Europe, polishing leather straps, checking armour pieces, repairing tools, shield decorated with personal symbols, realistic medieval craftsmanship artwork. A realistic medieval oil painting showing a knight's shield decorated with family symbols in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248 Europe. Wooden shield leaning beside a fireplace. Heraldic designs. sword and helmet nearby, candlelight, detailed historical artwork, a medieval painting of a high Middle Ages warrior's chamber during a stormy evening. 1248 European castle, knight surrounded by leather, wool, and metal equipment, rain falling outside, small fireplace glowing, peaceful atmosphere instead of battle, authentic medieval style. A detailed medieval manuscript painting of a noble knight speaking with another person inside a castle chamber in 1240 High Middle Ages Europe, discussing weather, supplies, and tomorrow's plans, candles, wooden furniture, stone walls, realistic daily medieval life. A historical oil painting of a medieval knight reading or examining written pages beside a fireplace. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 Europe. Small book on wooden table, candlelight, armour nearby, showing literacy and education among some knights. Authentic medieval interior. A cinematic medieval painting of a knight looking through a narrow castle window during a rainy night in 1240 High Middle Ages Europe. Dark courtyard below, distant lanterns glowing, storm clouds, stone walls, reflective peaceful mood, detailed historical artwork. A realistic medieval oil painting of a knight preparing clothing and equipment before sleep. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248. Folded garments on wooden bench. Armour placed carefully. Candles burning. Fireplace warmth. Showing medieval evening rituals. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style artwork of a High Middle Ages castle at night. 1248 Europe. Different rooms showing different lives. Night resting above. Servants working below. Families preparing for sleep. Candlelit corridors. Rain outside. Detailed historical storytelling painting. A detailed medieval oil painting of a knight's armour resting beside a fireplace after a day of duty. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 European castle, helmet, shield, sword, leather gear arranged neatly, soft candlelight, peaceful historical atmosphere, a realistic historical painting of a medieval knight without battle imagery. High Middle Ages Europe. 1248 A tired warrior sitting quietly beside the fire, thinking about tomorrow. Rain sounds outside. Simple human moment. Authentic 13th century painting style. A dark atmospheric medieval painting of a castle corridor outside a knight's chamber in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Flickering candles along stone walls, wooden doors, shadows. Rain echoing through the fortress. Mysterious but cozy bedtime story mood. A cinematic oil painting showing the transition from noble rooms to worker areas inside a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Traveller descending a stone staircase. Warmer rooms above and darker servant areas below. Candles. Ancient architecture. Historical artwork. A detailed medieval painting of hidden castle worker rooms during the High Middle Ages. 1248 Europe. Simple wooden beds, storage areas, servants resting after work, modest furniture, stone walls, candlelight, showing the unseen lives supporting the castle. A realistic medieval oil painting of a traveller descending through a cold stone staircase inside a 13th century castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Temperature changing between floors. Rain sounds growing louder. Candlelight fading. Authentic medieval atmosphere. A medieval historical painting showing the many rhythms of life inside a 1248 stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Night resting in one room. Servants finishing tasks. Families sleeping. Candles glowing across different chambers. Detailed storytelling artwork. A grand medieval oil painting of a high Middle Ages fortress during a rainy night in 1248 Europe. Stone towers above, hidden rooms below, knights, servants, and workers maintaining the castle's life. Candlelit interiors, storm outside, authentic 13th century historical painting style. A detailed medieval oil painting of a high Middle Ages servant chamber inside a 1248 European stone castle. Workers finishing evening tasks near a small fireplace, folding cloth, checking supplies, cleaning tools, candlelight reflecting on stone walls. Authentic 13th century daily life. Historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing the lower working areas of a high Middle Ages castle in 1248 Europe. Narrow stone rooms, servants maintaining supplies, wooden shelves, baskets of linens, small fires, damp walls, practical medieval environment, detailed historical artwork. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of castle servants working during a rainy night in the 13th century. High Middle Ages Europe. Cooks, craftsmen, messengers, and workers performing daily duties inside stone chambers. Candlelight. Authentic medieval society scene. A detailed oil painting of a medieval servant carrying a heavy basket of linens through a stone castle corridor in 1248 High Middle Ages period. Candle flames flickering, wooden doors, damp stone floors, realistic clothing and historical atmosphere. A realistic medieval painting of workers sharing a quiet conversation before sleep inside a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Servants sitting near a small fire, gentle laughter, simple wooden furniture, rain sounds outside. Cozy historical evening scene. A medieval oil painting showing the hidden heart of a 13th century European castle. High Middle Ages period. Ordinary workers maintaining the fortress, preparing supplies, repairing clothing, caring for tools, stone rooms illuminated by candles, detailed historical artwork, a detailed medieval painting of a castle repair workshop during a rainy night in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Craftsmen sitting at a wooden table with thread, leather, needles and tools, candlelight shining on careful hands. Authentic medieval craftsmanship. A realistic historical oil painting of a medieval artisan repairing leather and clothing inside a stone castle. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 Europe. Handmade tools, wooden workbench, candles, fireplace smoke, peaceful craftsmanship atmosphere. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style artwork of everyday workers inside a High Middle Ages fortress. 1248 Europe. Servants organizing supplies, craftsmen repairing objects, workers carrying materials, showing the invisible labor that keeps a castle alive. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a small sleeping area for castle workers in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248 Europe. Simple wooden beds arranged closely together, personal belongings nearby, candlelight, stone walls, peaceful rainy night atmosphere. A detailed historical medieval painting of servant quarters inside a 13th century stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Workers resting after long duties, wool blankets, wooden storage boxes, simple living conditions, authentic medieval interior style. A realistic medieval painting of a servant's personal belongings in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. A wooden box, handmade comb, favourite cup, folded clothing, small treasured objects beside a sleeping area. Candlelight, showing medieval personal life. A medieval oil painting of cooperation inside a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe, cooks, craftsmen, servants, and workers working together in lower stone rooms, carrying supplies, repairing tools, maintaining daily life, detailed historical artwork, a dark atmospheric medieval painting of hidden castle corridors beneath the Great Hall, High Middle Ages period, 1248 Europe, narrow stone passages, small fires, storage rooms, servants moving quietly, rain echoing through the fortress, cinematic historical style, a detailed medieval manuscript painting showing ordinary life inside a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Workers singing quietly while completing tasks, passing traditions through songs and stories, candlelit stone rooms, authentic medieval culture artwork. A realistic oil painting of medieval workers listening to rain inside a lower castle chamber. High Middle Ages Europe. 1248 period. Servants resting beside a fire, stone walls, wooden beams, peaceful stormy night atmosphere. Emotional historical painting. A cinematic medieval painting of a traveller discovering the hidden lives of castle workers in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Lower rooms filled with craftsmen, servants, tools, supplies, and simple sleeping areas, showing the human side of medieval castles. A historical medieval oil painting of a worker climbing stone steps from the lower servant quarters of a 13th century castle, High Middle Ages period, carrying memories of hidden rooms, candlelight behind, rain outside, atmospheric storytelling artwork, a detailed medieval painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle at night. Year 1248 Europe. Grand towers above, but countless servants and workers below keeping the fortress alive. Candlelit rooms, rain falling outside, realistic historical perspective. A grand medieval oil painting of the unseen foundation of a 1248 European castle, High Middle Ages era. Workers maintaining the fortress through quiet tasks. Craftsmen, servants, storage rooms, stone walls, storm outside, authentic 13th century historical painting style. A detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle corridor in the year 1248 European fortress interior. A traveller walking through narrow passages while rain echoes outside. Soft candlelight reflecting on rough stone walls. Thick medieval architecture. Atmospheric historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting of a small stone window inside a 13th century European castle. High Middle Ages period. Dark rainy landscape outside. Fields and trees hidden by storm clouds. Candlelight inside. Thick stone walls. Authentic medieval atmosphere. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting showing a traveller touching the ancient stone wall of a High Middle Ages castle in 1248. Rough cold stones, flickering candles, rain outside, emotional connection with medieval architecture, detailed historical artwork, a cinematic oil painting of a 1248 European stone fortress during a rainy night. High Middle Ages era. Massive defensive walls, narrow passages, towers disappearing into darkness, water flowing along stones, candlelit interior, realistic medieval architecture. A detailed historical medieval painting of a castle watch chamber in the High Middle Ages, year 1248 Europe. A guard or observer sitting beside a small window, wooden table, candles, rain falling over the outer walls, peaceful nighttime atmosphere, a realistic medieval oil painting showing a medieval castle guard watching the storm from a stone chamber in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe, observing dark fields and travellers below, candlelight, simple wooden furniture, authentic 13th century life scene. A medieval painting of a quiet castle room where someone keeps watch during a rainy night. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248. Wooden table with candles. Narrow window overlooking fortress grounds. Stone walls. Historical manuscript style. A detailed medieval oil painting of rain interacting with a High Middle Ages castle design. 1248 Europe. Water flowing from stone rooftops, drainage channels, towers, wooden beams, moss-covered walls, showing medieval engineering and architecture. A realistic historical painting of medieval castle architecture during a storm. High Middle Ages Europe. Thick defensive walls, strong wooden gates, towers, narrow windows, stone passages, rain falling across the fortress, detailed architectural artwork, a medieval illustrated manuscript painting of a 13th century castle at night. High Middle Ages Europe, the fortress appearing alive with sounds, guards walking, doors closing, fireplaces burning, candlelight glowing through windows, rain surrounding the walls. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a traveller sitting beside a castle window listening to rainfall in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Candle flame moving gently, storm outside, warm interior, peaceful reflective mood. Historical storytelling style, a detailed medieval painting of a High Middle Ages person observing nature signs during a rainy night. Year 1248, Europe. Looking through a stone window at birds, clouds, and changing weather. Candles inside, showing medieval beliefs and connection with nature. A realistic medieval oil painting of an ancient castle interior during a stormy night. High Middle Ages period. Repaired wooden beams, fresh mortar between stones, lanterns, craftsmen's maintenance details, showing a living medieval structure, a medieval painting showing workers maintaining a 1248 stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Builders repairing walls, craftsmen fixing wooden structures, lanterns illuminating stone surfaces, rain falling outside, authentic medieval labour scene. A detailed historical medieval artwork of the hidden maintenance work behind a great European castle, High Middle Ages era. Year 1248 craftsmen, builders, tools, stone repairs, wooden beams, candles, realistic medieval craftsmanship. A dark atmospheric medieval oil painting of wind moving through the upper levels of a 13th century castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Narrow openings, wooden beams, candle flames, rain outside, mysterious but peaceful fortress atmosphere. A realistic medieval painting of a castle interior connecting different worlds. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 Europe. Great hall below, servant areas, private chambers, towers above, all connected by stone corridors and candlelight. Historical storytelling artwork. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a traveller standing at the top of a castle staircase during a rainy night in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. looking back at the dark corridors below, candles glowing, ancient stone walls, emotional historical scene, a medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of different people experiencing the same rainy night inside a high Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Guard watching walls, worker resting, family near fireplace, traveller waiting, connected through the ancient fortress. A grand medieval oil painting of a high Middle Ages stone castle, surviving a powerful nighttime storm in 1248 Europe. Massive walls protecting people inside, rain hitting rooftops, candles glowing through windows, fortress and home combined. Authentic 13th century historical artwork. A detailed medieval oil painting of a high Middle Ages private chamber in a 1248 European stone castle. A candle burning beside a wooden table filled with everyday objects, a cup, small knife, comb, folded cloth, and handmade belongings. Warm candlelight, authentic 13th century interior, historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing ordinary household objects inside a high Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Wooden cups, tools, fabric, shelves, iron fittings, and repaired items displayed in a quiet chamber. Candlelight reflecting on stone walls. Detailed historical artwork. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a craftsman's workspace inside a 13th century European castle. High Middle Ages period. Wooden shelves, handmade tools, repaired furniture, stitched fabrics, iron objects, candlelight, authentic medieval craftsmanship scene. A detailed oil painting of a medieval person repairing clothing beside a candle during a rainy night in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Needle and thread, wool fabric, wooden table, stone room, quiet atmosphere, showing patience and craftsmanship. Historical artwork. A realistic medieval painting of a wooden cup being carefully used inside a high Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Worn smooth by generations of hands. Wooden table, candlelight, simple household objects, showing medieval respect for possessions. Detailed historical style. A medieval oil painting showing creative reuse of everyday objects in a 13th century castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Old fabric scraps transformed into useful items. Wooden containers reused. Craftsmen repairing belongings. Candlelit room. Authentic medieval lifestyle artwork. A detailed historical painting of a wooden chest opened inside a 1248 castle chamber. High Middle Ages period. Clothing, cloaks, tunics, jewellery, folded fabrics, and personal belongings stored inside. Candlelight illuminating stone walls. Realistic medieval interior. A realistic medieval oil painting showing different social classes through clothing in a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Noble garments with finer fabrics compared with workers' simple wool clothing. Wooden chest, candlelight, authentic historical comparison. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a person organising clothing inside a castle room during a rainy night. High Middle Ages Europe. Folding garments, protecting fabrics from moisture, wooden chest, candles, peaceful medieval household scene, a cinematic medieval painting of a small carved wooden object inside a High Middle Ages castle chamber. 1248 Europe. Decorative handmade carving on a wooden table. Candles glowing. showing medieval creativity, symbolism, and appreciation of beauty. Detailed historical artwork. A detailed medieval oil painting of a scribe's writing area inside a 13th century European castle. High Middle Ages period. Wooden writing desk, ink container, parchment, quill pens, candles, stone walls, authentic medieval manuscript atmosphere. A realistic historical painting of a medieval scribe writing by candlelight in 1248 Europe. High Middle Ages, carefully creating handwritten pages, parchment sheets, ink, quill, quiet stone chamber, showing patience and knowledge preservation. Detailed oil painting style. A medieval manuscript-style artwork depicting monks and scribes copying text during the High Middle Ages. Year 1248 Europe. Monastery-inspired writing room. Candles, parchment, wooden desks. Religious and historical manuscripts. Authentic medieval illustration. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a written letter arriving at a 1248 European castle. High Middle Ages period. Messenger presenting a sealed document. Noble chamber. Candles. Wooden table. Showing the importance of medieval communication. A detailed historical medieval painting of information and record-keeping inside a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Supply records. Handwritten documents. Ink pots, parchment, administrators working by candlelight, authentic medieval society scene. A realistic medieval painting of a quiet castle room containing everyday food and personal items. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248 wooden spoon, bowl, herb container, cups, simple tools, candlelight, showing ordinary medieval routines. A medieval oil painting of a traveller discovering the personal belongings of people who lived in a 1248 stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Everyday objects on wooden tables, clothing, tools, writing materials, emotional historical storytelling style. A detailed medieval illustration of a rainy night inside a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Candlelight revealing forgotten objects left behind by generations. Wooden furniture, stone walls, personal belongings, atmospheric historical artwork. A realistic historical oil painting of medieval daily life preserved through objects. High Middle Ages period. 1248 European castle room, cups, tools, clothing, manuscripts. Household items telling human stories, warm candlelight, detailed museum-quality painting. A grand medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle interior at night in 1248 Europe. A quiet room filled with everyday objects. Candles burning low, shadows across stone walls, personal belongings revealing ordinary medieval lives. Authentic 13th century historical painting style, a detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages sleeping chamber in a 1248 European stone castle, a small candle burning beside a sleeping area, folded blanket, wooden container with personal belongings, simple furniture, rain outside, warm and peaceful nighttime atmosphere. Authentic 13th century historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing a person preparing for sleep inside a High Middle Ages castle room. Year 1248 Europe. Sitting beside a small fireplace. Candlelight illuminating stone walls. Folded blankets. Wooden objects nearby. Quiet, rainy night mood. Detailed historical artwork. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of dreams and imagination in the High Middle Ages. 1248 Europe. A sleeping person inside a stone castle surrounded by symbolic images of family, journeys, forests, animals, and distant lands, candlelight, authentic medieval storytelling art. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a person resting beside a fireplace during a rainy night in a 13th century European castle. High Middle Ages period. Thoughtful expression. Warm firelight. Shadows moving across stone walls. Peaceful bedtime atmosphere. A detailed historical medieval painting of a High Middle Ages family gathering around a fireplace telling stories. Year 1248 Europe. Adults and children listening to tales of heroes, saints, distant lands, and mysterious creatures. Candles glowing. Authentic medieval social scene. A realistic medieval oil painting of storytelling inside a 1248 stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Travellers and workers sharing legends near a fire. Wooden benches, stone walls, candlelight, rainy night outside. Detailed historical artwork. A medieval manuscript-style artwork showing medieval imagination inspired by nature. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 Europe. Forests, rivers, animals, storms, a mythical symbol surrounding storytellers. Colourful medieval illustration style. A detailed medieval oil painting of candle shadows moving across ancient castle walls during a rainy night in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. A person watching the flickering shapes. Stone chamber, warm candlelight, mysterious but peaceful atmosphere. A realistic historical painting of medieval manuscripts being studied by candlelight inside a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248, Europe. Wooden table, handwritten pages, ink container, quill, decorative illustrations, quiet scholarly atmosphere. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a 13th century scribe creating a decorated manuscript. High Middle Ages Europe. Careful handwritten text, colourful borders, artistic designs, candles, parchment pages, authentic medieval craftsmanship. A detailed oil painting of a medieval reader studying a manuscript in a castle chamber during a rainy night. High Middle Ages period. 1248 Europe. Candlelight. Wooden desk, handwritten pages, stone walls. Peaceful intellectual atmosphere. A cinematic medieval painting showing invisible stories inside a High Middle Ages castle at night. Year 1248. Europe. One person reading quietly. Another family sharing stories. A traveller speaking near a fire. Workers resting. Connected through candlelit rooms. A realistic medieval oil painting of a quiet castle chamber where knowledge and stories are preserved. High Middle Ages Europe. Books, parchment, handwritten letters, candles, wooden furniture, rain outside narrow windows, historical atmosphere, a medieval historical painting of people interpreting dreams in the High Middle Ages, year 1248 Europe, a person sleeping beside a fireplace while others discuss symbols and beliefs, candlelight, religious and cultural elements, authentic medieval artwork, a detailed medieval manuscript painting of a dream scene from 13th century Europe, High Middle Ages period, sleeping person inside a castle, symbolic imagery of stars, animals, forests, and journeys appearing around them, traditional medieval illustration style, a cozy medieval oil painting of a peaceful sleeping area inside a 1248 stone castle, High Middle Ages Europe, someone already resting beneath a blanket, low fireplace glow, nearly burned candle, rain tapping against the roof, serene bedtime atmosphere. A realistic medieval painting of a traveller walking through a silent castle corridor during the deepest hours of night. High Middle Ages period, year 1248 Europe, candlelight fading, sleeping rooms nearby, stone walls, gentle rain echoing outside, a cinematic historical oil painting of a 13th century European castle becoming quiet at midnight, High Middle Ages era, final candles burning low, fireplaces fading, people sleeping, rain falling over towers, peaceful ancient fortress atmosphere, a grand medieval painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle during a rainy night. Year 1248. Europe. Windows glowing softly with candlelight. People dreaming and resting inside. Storm clouds above. Ancient walls protecting the sleeping inhabitants. Detailed historical artwork. A highly detailed medieval oil painting of a 1248 European castle in its deepest night. High Middle Ages period. Silent corridors. Sleeping chambers. Gentle candlelight. Rain falling over stone roofs. A sense of history, dreams, and human stories within the fortress. Authentic 13th century painting style. A detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle at midnight in the year 1248 European fortress interior. Empty corridors, fading candlelight, rain falling outside, guards moving quietly, deep, peaceful nighttime atmosphere, authentic 13th century historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing the midnight rhythm of a 1248 stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe, a traveller walking slowly through silent corridors. Wet stone walls, candle flames flickering, rain streams on rooftops outside. Atmospheric historical artwork. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a small castle chamber at midnight. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248. Europe. Glowing remains of a fireplace. Orange firelight on stone walls. Wooden furniture. Peaceful transition between waking and sleeping. Detailed medieval artwork. A cinematic oil painting of a person sitting beside a medieval hearth during a rainy night in a 13th century castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Low flames glowing warmly. Stone walls. Wooden bowl and tools nearby. Quiet, reflective mood. Historical painting style. A detailed historical medieval painting of a High Middle Ages fireplace as the centre of domestic life. Year 1248 Europe. Family members, servants, and guards gathering around the hearth. Warmth and candlelight. Stone castle interior. Authentic medieval atmosphere. A realistic medieval oil painting of a servant warming tired hands beside a castle fire at midnight. High Middle Ages period. 1248 European stone fortress. Simple clothing. Wooden objects nearby. Rain outside. Emotional everyday life scene. A medieval painting of ordinary objects beside a castle hearth during a rainy midnight. High Middle Ages Europe. Wooden bowl, metal tools, repaired cloth, candlelight, stone fireplace, showing the hidden meaning of everyday medieval belongings. A detailed medieval manuscript-style artwork showing medieval people measuring time without clocks. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 Europe. Bells, candles, natural signs, daily routines, castle interior, authentic historical illustration, A realistic oil painting of a 13th century castle window during a dark, rainy night. High Middle Ages Europe. Complete darkness outside. No lights beyond the walls, candle glowing inside, thick stone frame, peaceful medieval atmosphere. A cinematic medieval painting of a High Middle Ages castle transformed by darkness at midnight. Year 1248 Europe. Empty great hall, silent courtyard, shadow-filled staircases, rain covering the fortress, candles glowing in distant rooms, historical storytelling style, a detailed historical painting of a medieval great hall after midnight, High Middle Ages period. 1248 European castle, empty wooden tables, extinguished candles, fading fireplace embers, silent benches, rain tapping against stone walls, a medieval oil painting showing a deserted castle courtyard during a rainy midnight in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Wet stones reflecting moonlight and lanterns, empty pathways, towers disappearing into mist, peaceful storm atmosphere, a realistic medieval painting of a person listening to rain beside a thick castle wall in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248 Europe. Hand-touching ancient stone, candlelight behind, raindrops echoing through the fortress. Emotional historical artwork. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a traveller experiencing the connection between past and present through rain. High Middle Ages castle in 1248 Europe. Ancient stone walls, storm clouds, identical rainfall across centuries, poetic historical atmosphere, a detailed medieval painting of an ancient stone castle remembering centuries of human life, High Middle Ages Europe. 1248 Fortress interior, ghosts of memories represented through subtle shadows, celebrations, worries, and daily routines. Artistic historical style. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of nighttime beliefs in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248 Europe. People interpreting mysterious sounds, animals, weather signs, and natural events. Candlelit castle room. Authentic medieval culture artwork. A realistic oil painting of a quiet medieval corridor where sleeping lives surround the castle. High Middle Ages period. 1248 Europe. Closed doors, low candles, guards watching, families resting, servants sleeping, rain outside, peaceful atmosphere. A detailed historical medieval painting of a traveller looking back through a castle corridor at midnight. High Middle Ages Europe. Great hall, workers' rooms, private chambers connected by stone passages, candles fading, showing the complete life of the fortress. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages castle tower during a rainy midnight. Year 1248 Europe. Wind moving through narrow openings, guard preparing to watch the darkness, candles, stone walls, dramatic historical atmosphere. A grand medieval oil painting of a 1248 European stone castle at midnight. High Middle Ages era. Fortress filled with sleeping inhabitants. Hearths glowing. Guards watching towers. Rain falling over ancient walls. Human moments held together by stone. Authentic 13th century historical artwork. A detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages castle watchtower at night in the year 1248. European stone fortress rising into darkness. A guard standing inside a narrow tower room. Small lantern glowing. Rain falling outside. Authentic 13th century architecture. Historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing a castle guard keeping watch during a rainy midnight in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Narrow stone tower opening, wet walls, dark landscape beyond. Candlelight and lantern glow, peaceful duty atmosphere, detailed historical artwork, a medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a High Middle Ages lookout tower interior, year 1248, Europe, wooden seat, lantern, cloak, simple supplies, guard observing the storm outside, stone walls, authentic medieval fortress scene, a cinematic oil painting of a medieval guard looking through a narrow castle tower window during a stormy night. High Middle Ages period. 1248 European castle, blurred rainy fields below, wind and clouds, dramatic but peaceful historical atmosphere. A detailed historical medieval painting of a watchman standing above a 13th century stone castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Tower surrounded by rain and mist. Guard holding a lantern. Fortress rooftops below. Authentic medieval defensive architecture. A realistic medieval oil painting of two castle guards sharing quiet conversation during a rainy night watch. High Middle Ages era. Year 1248 Europe. Stone tower interior. Lantern light. Warm cloaks, discussing weather and stories, human moment in medieval life. A medieval painting showing the peaceful side of a castle guard's duty in the High Middle Ages. 1248 Europe. Lonely watchtower, guard listening to rain, simple wooden chair, candle flame, no battle, calm nighttime atmosphere. Historical artwork, a detailed medieval manuscript-style artwork of a guard tower during a storm, High Middle Ages period, year 1248 Europe, rain-hitting stone walls, narrow windows, lanterns, guards observing the horizon, authentic medieval illustration style. A realistic oil painting of a medieval castle seen from above during a rainy night. High Middle Ages Europe, year 1248 towers, roofs, courtyards connected together, lanterns glowing below, storm clouds covering the landscape, detailed historical landscape painting, a cinematic medieval painting of a 1248 stone fortress adapting through centuries. High Middle Ages Europe, towers, repaired walls, added structures, craftsman's changes visible, rainy night atmosphere, showing a living evolving castle, historical artwork, a detailed medieval oil painting of a castle tower interior with medieval communication tools, High Middle Ages period, year 1248 Europe, bell rope, lantern, wooden equipment, guard preparing signals, stone walls, authentic historical setting, a realistic medieval painting of a large castle bell ringing through a rainy night in 13th century Europe. High Middle Ages era, tower above the fortress, guards and villagers responding below, sound carrying through darkness, dramatic historical artwork, a medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting showing medieval signals and communication, High Middle Ages Europe, year 1248 castle bells, lantern signals, messengers, guards coordinating through sounds instead of modern technology, detailed historical illustration, a detailed oil painting of a medieval guard sitting inside a tower during the deepest hours of night. High Middle Ages period. 1248 Europe. Listening to wind and rain. Small lantern beside him. Stone walls. Thoughtful expression. Peaceful historical scene. A realistic medieval painting of a guard looking down from a castle tower at sleeping inhabitants below. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248. Faint lantern lights in courtyard. Families resting inside stone rooms. Rain covering the fortress. Emotional historical artwork. A cinematic medieval oil painting of isolation and connection in a High Middle Ages castle. 1248 Europe. Lone guard in tower surrounded by darkness while warm lights glow from rooms below. Rainstorm outside. Symbolic historical atmosphere. A detailed medieval painting of a guard's simple equipment in a 13th century watchtower. High Middle Ages Europe. Lantern, wool cloak, wooden supplies, stone opening, rainwater on walls, showing practical medieval preparation, a realistic historical oil painting of a High Middle Ages fortress during a rainy midnight. Year 1248 Europe, guards watching from towers, fires burning low inside, quiet corridors, storm clouds above, authentic medieval night atmosphere, a medieval manuscript-style painting of patience and observation in medieval life, High Middle Ages period. 1248 Europe, guard standing still in a tower, watching the horizon, rain falling, emphasizing attention and responsibility. Detailed artwork. A grand medieval oil painting of a 1248 European stone castle approaching dawn. High Middle Ages era. Watch towers above sleeping fortress. Guards continuing their duties. Rain falling softly. Candles fading. Ancient walls protecting the people inside. Authentic 13th century historical painting style. A detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle before dawn in the year 1248. European fortress interior. A traveller descending from a watchtower through quiet candlelit corridors. Candles burning low. Rain still falling softly outside. Authentic 13th century historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing a castle at the final hours of a rainy night. High Middle Ages Europe, year 1248, dark corridors, fading candles, soft shadows. Early signs of morning approaching. Peaceful transition from night to day. Detailed historical artwork. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of early morning inside a 13th century European castle. High Middle Ages period. Servants quietly walking through stone corridors, checking supplies, preparing fires, carrying water. Authentic medieval daily routine scene. A cinematic oil painting of a medieval castle window before sunrise. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248, rain becoming gentle, dark clouds slowly moving away. First hints of dawn beyond the stone walls, candlelight inside, atmospheric historical artwork. A detailed historical medieval painting of a castle courtyard after a night storm in 1248, High Middle Ages Europe. Wet stone paths, water dripping from rooftops, fresh earth. Horses waking in stables, birds beginning to sing, peaceful morning atmosphere, a realistic medieval oil painting of a horse waking inside a High Middle Ages castle stable, year 1248 Europe, horse shaking rainwater from its coat, stable worker preparing for morning, wet straw, wooden stalls, soft dawn light, authentic medieval scene. A medieval painting of a rainy castle courtyard transforming from night into morning. High Middle Ages period. 1248 Europe. Workers returning to daily tasks, repairing carts, checking supplies, stone walls shining after rainfall, detailed historical artwork, A detailed medieval manuscript-style artwork showing medieval workers maintaining a castle after a storm. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248, checking wooden carts, repairing wheels, inspecting supplies, wet tools. Practical daily life illustration. A realistic oil painting of a castle worker repairing a muddy wooden cart after a rainy night. High Middle Ages period, 12th to 48 Europe, wet wheels. Wooden tools, stone courtyard, early morning light, authentic medieval craftsmanship scene. A cinematic medieval painting of a High Middle Ages castle slowly waking after midnight rain. Year 1248. Europe. Servants moving quietly. Fireplaces being prepared. Animals stirring. Stone corridors filling with morning activity. Historical storytelling style. A detailed historical medieval painting of the difference between noble and worker mornings inside a 13th century castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Noble chamber with warm fire versus workers beginning tasks in courtyard. Same sunrise, different lives, realistic artwork. A realistic medieval oil painting of a servant preparing a warm herbal drink near a fireplace at dawn in a 1248 castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Herbs, wooden cups, smoke rising, stone room, peaceful morning routine, detailed historical style. A medieval illustrated manuscript painting of herbs used in High Middle Ages households. Year 1248, Europe. Sage, mint, rosemary. Plants beside food preparation areas, medieval kitchen room, candles and fireplace, authentic historical illustration. A cozy medieval oil painting of a castle fireplace at dawn, High Middle Ages period. 12th to 48 Europe. Flames glowing softly after a rainy night. Worker preparing the day nearby. Wooden furniture, stone walls, warm peaceful atmosphere. A detailed medieval painting of ordinary medieval mornings inside a European castle. High Middle Ages era. Year 1248, people opening doors, carrying supplies, preparing food, checking animals, simple routines that keep the fortress alive. A realistic historical oil painting of a traveller walking through a familiar castle corridor after spending the night there. High Middle Ages Europe. 1248 morning light entering through windows. Stone walls. Memories of kitchens, halls and towers. Emotional storytelling artwork. A cinematic medieval painting of the castle entrance hall at dawn. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 Europe. Traveller standing near the large wooden doors where the journey began. Rain outside, first light appearing, reflective historical atmosphere. A medieval oil painting of ancient castle walls after a storm, High Middle Ages Europe. 1248 wet stone surfaces reflecting early morning light. Moss, dripping rooftops. Clouds clearing. Fortress appearing refreshed and alive. Detailed landscape artwork. A grand historical medieval painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle, awakening after a rainy night. Year 1248, Europe. Workers returning to duty, horses moving, fires burning, dawn beyond clouds, authentic 13th century atmosphere. A highly detailed medieval oil painting of a 1248 European castle at sunrise after a storm. High Middle Ages era. Rain ending. Golden morning light touching ancient stone walls. People beginning a new day. Fortress filled with quiet human life. Authentic historical painting style. A detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle kitchen at dawn in the year 1248 European fortress interior. pale morning light entering through windows, cooks reviving the hearth fire, wooden doors opening, workers preparing food. Authentic 13th century historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing a 1248 castle kitchen waking after a rainy night. High Middle Ages Europe. Cooks and servants moving with purpose. Fresh bread. Herbs. Smoke from the fireplace. Warm atmosphere. Detailed historical artwork. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of bread making in a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248, Europe. Workers shaping dough by hand. Sacks of grain, wooden tables, stone oven, candles and firelight. Authentic medieval agricultural scene. A detailed historical oil painting of medieval bakers preparing bread inside a 13th century European castle. High Middle Ages period. Skilled hands shaping dough. Wooden tools, flour, warm hearth. Realistic craftsmanship artwork. A realistic medieval painting of a castle cook preparing a warm herbal drink at dawn in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Steam rising from a wooden cup, herbs nearby, fireplace glowing, stone kitchen walls, peaceful morning atmosphere. A medieval oil painting showing the importance of medieval agriculture and food production. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248. Farmers growing grain outside the castle. Mill workers. Bakers inside the fortress. Connected food preparation process. Historical artwork. A detailed medieval manuscript-style artwork of medieval ingredients and trade. 13th century Europe. High Middle Ages period. Herbs, spices, wooden containers, dried plants, kitchen workers storing valuable seasonings inside a stone castle. Authentic illustration style. A cinematic medieval painting of a castle kitchen as the heart of daily life in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Cooks preparing meals, servants carrying supplies, fire glowing, bread baking, stone walls illuminated by morning light. Historical storytelling style. A realistic oil painting of medieval workers carrying food through castle corridors during the morning. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248. Europe. Wooden trays, bread, herbs, stone floors, servants moving through a waking fortress. Detailed historical artwork. A detailed medieval painting of a High Middle Ages castle courtyard after a storm. 1248 Europe. Wet stone pathways reflecting sunlight. Animals being cared for. Workers checking supplies. Fresh air after rain. Authentic medieval morning scene. A realistic medieval oil painting of castle workers cleaning and repairing areas after a rainy night. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248 drying fabrics. Fixing wooden equipment. Clearing wet paths. Stone courtyard. Practical medieval life artwork. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a castle breakfast in the High Middle Ages. 1248 Europe. Workers and residents eating a simple morning meal. Wooden tables, bread, cups, quiet conversations, beginning of the day atmosphere. A detailed historical painting of medieval people discussing plans after a storm. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 Europe. Breakfast room inside a stone castle. Workers checking tasks, talking about roads and weather. Candle and firelight. A realistic oil painting showing medieval people observing nature and weather patterns. High Middle Ages Europe. 1248 villagers and castle workers watching clouds, animals, plants, and changing skies. connection between nature and daily life, historical artwork, a cinematic medieval painting of travellers arriving at a 1248 stone castle after a rainy storm, High Middle Ages Europe, wet clothing, muddy roads, guards welcoming visitors, messenger carrying news, horses near the gate, authentic historical atmosphere, a detailed medieval oil painting of a medieval messenger arriving at a castle after bad weather, High Middle Ages period, year 1248, Europe, horse covered with rain, guard opening wooden gates, important news being delivered, realistic historical artwork. A realistic medieval painting of the Great Hall returning to daytime activity after a rainy night. High Middle Ages Europe, year 1248, cleaned wooden tables, bright fireplace, sunlight entering through windows, servants preparing the room. Detailed historical style. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a High Middle Ages castle transforming from night into day. 12 to 48 Europe. Quiet corridors becoming busy. Kitchens active. Courtyard alive. People returning to work. Authentic medieval storytelling artwork. A cinematic oil painting of a traveller standing inside a medieval castle, watching sunlight enter after a storm. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 Europe. Damp stone floor glowing with morning light. Clouds separating outside. Emotional historical scene. A grand medieval oil painting of a 1248 European stone castle fully awake after a rainy night. High Middle Ages era. Fires burning, food preparation, workers moving, travellers arriving, sunlight touching ancient walls. Authentic 13th century historical painting style. A detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle in the morning after a rainy night. Year 1248 Europe. Traveller walking through familiar corridors. Sunlight entering through narrow windows. Wet stone walls. Workers returning to daily life. Authentic 13th century historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting of a castle courtyard after a storm in the High Middle Ages. 1248 Europe, wet cobblestones. Water dripping from rooftops. Workers moving through the courtyard. Repairing tools and restoring daily routines. Fresh morning atmosphere. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of ordinary castle workers maintaining a 13th century fortress. High Middle Ages period. Craftsmen, servants, cooks, and animal caretakers working together. Stone towers above, showing the hidden life of the castle. A detailed historical oil painting of medieval craftsmen repairing a wooden chair inside a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248 Europe. Worker using handmade tools, wooden furniture, candlelight and morning light. Authentic medieval craftsmanship scene. A realistic medieval painting of a baker preparing bread before sunrise inside a 1248 European castle kitchen. High Middle Ages era. Fresh dough. Stone oven, wooden tables, herbs, warm firelight, detailed historical artwork. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a castle guard watching the rainy landscape from a fortress wall in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248. Europe. Wet stone tower. Morning clouds. Lantern fading. Peaceful duty atmosphere. A detailed medieval painting of a servant carrying thick blankets through a cold stone castle corridor. High Middle Ages Europe. 1248 period. Narrow hallway. wooden doors, morning light, realistic medieval daily life artwork, a realistic historical painting showing cooperation inside a 13th century European castle, High Middle Ages period, workers preparing food, repairing objects, caring for animals, maintaining supplies, all connected through daily routines, detailed oil painting style, a medieval oil painting of the castle kitchen entrance in the morning, year 1248 Europe, High Middle Ages, warm firelight spreading into the corridor, cooks preparing meals, herbs and bread scents, wooden furniture, authentic medieval atmosphere, a detailed medieval manuscript-style artwork showing medieval resource preservation, High Middle Ages Europe, 1248 people repairing clothing, reusing containers, fixing tools, maintaining household items, candlelit workshop, historical illustration, style a realistic oil painting of a medieval person examining an old handmade object inside a castle, High Middle Ages period, year 1248 Europe, wooden cup, tools, carved items, wondering about previous owners. Emotional historical scene, a cinematic medieval painting of a traveller climbing familiar castle stairs during daylight, High Middle Ages Europe, 1248 hand-touching worn stone railing, sunlight entering through narrow windows, ancient architecture, reflective mood, a detailed historical medieval oil painting of private chambers in a 1248 stone castle during morning light. High Middle Ages Europe, noble room with brighter fabrics, wooden furniture, narrow windows, peaceful atmosphere after the storm. A realistic medieval painting of a person standing beside a castle window, looking over muddy roads after rainfall. High Middle Ages period, year 1248 Europe, farmers and travellers below, cloudy sky, stone interior, historical artwork, a medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of medieval life, adapting to weather and seasons. High Middle Ages Europe, 1248 workers adjusting plans, muddy roads, changing daylight, farming activities, castle in background, authentic medieval illustration, a detailed oil painting of a High Middle Ages knight's chamber in the morning, year 1248 Europe, armour and shield arranged neatly, sunlight revealing metal and leather equipment, showing a practical warrior's life, realistic historical artwork, a realistic medieval painting showing the human side behind medieval roles, High Middle Ages period, 1248 Europe, night resting, servant working, noble family guard watching, all as ordinary people inside the same castle, emotional storytelling style, a cinematic medieval oil painting of a fully awakened 1248 stone castle, High Middle Ages Europe, footsteps in corridors, doors opening, servants moving, sunlight through windows, fires burning, fortress returning to daily activity. A detailed medieval painting of a castle that feels like a lived-in home rather than a monument. High Middle Ages era. Year 1248 Europe. Personal objects, workers, families, kitchens, chambers, and towers connected together. Authentic historical artwork. A grand medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages European stone castle after a rainy night. Year 1248. Morning sunlight touching ancient walls. Workers continuing life. Wet stones. Peaceful atmosphere. Memories of the storm remaining. Authentic 13th century historical painting style. A detailed medieval oil painting of a high Middle Ages stone castle in the morning. Year 1248 Europe. A traveller walking through familiar halls for the final time. Sunlight entering narrow windows. Stone corridors now feeling welcoming. Authentic 13th century historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing a traveller passing through the Great Hall of a 1248 European castle. High Middle Ages period. Morning activities beginning. Wooden tables prepared. Fireplace burning. Servants moving with purpose. Memories of the rainy night reflected in the scene. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a great hall, changing from night to morning in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248, Europe. Evening firelight memories blending with daylight activity. Wooden tables, candles, stone walls, authentic medieval artwork. A detailed historical oil painting of worn medieval castle objects revealing human memories. High Middle Ages Europe. 1248 period. A smooth wooden bench, repaired table, marked doorway, old tools, traces of countless hands, emotional historical artwork. A realistic medieval painting of a traveller touching an old wooden doorway inside a 13th century European castle. High Middle Ages era. Worn wood surface. Stone walls. Morning light. Connection between human history and architecture. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a castle courtyard after a storm in 1248 High Middle Ages Europe. Workers carrying supplies, animals moving through the stable area, wet stones reflecting sunlight, fortress returning to daily life. A detailed medieval painting showing the many purposes of a High Middle Ages castle. Year 1248, Europe. Defensive towers, residential rooms, administrative spaces, kitchens, workers, guards, and nobles connected within one fortress. Historical artwork style. A realistic oil painting of a medieval stable in the morning. High Middle Ages period. 1248 Europe. Horses calmly moving after rain. Workers caring for animals. Wet wooden stalls. Sunlight entering the stable. Authentic medieval life scene. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style artwork of human and animal relationships in the High Middle Ages. Year 1248, Europe. Stable workers gently caring for horses, hunting animals nearby, showing emotional connections beyond usefulness. A detailed historical medieval painting of a moss-covered castle wall after rainfall. High Middle Ages Europe. 1248 period. Damp stones. Tiny plants growing through cracks. Workers walking nearby. Ancient fortress showing signs of survival. A realistic medieval oil painting of craftsmen repairing a 13th century stone castle wall. High Middle Ages Europe. Masons carrying stones. Carpenters working with wood. Metalworkers using tools, showing constant medieval maintenance. A cinematic medieval painting of different generations of repairs visible on an ancient castle wall. Year 1246 Europe. Original stones, newer additions, restored sections. Craftsman's work preserved through centuries. Historical architecture artwork. A detailed medieval manuscript-style painting of castle workers maintaining a fortress. High Middle Ages period. 1248 Europe. Masons, carpenters, and metalworkers working together. Stone towers behind them. Authentic medieval craftsmanship. A realistic oil painting of a traveller observing the different layers of a medieval castle's history. High Middle Ages Europe. Ancient stones, repaired walls, old wooden structures, generations of human effort visible, emotional historical scene. A detailed medieval painting showing all parts of a 1248 castle connected together. High Middle Ages Europe, Great Hall, kitchens, servant rooms, private chambers, watchtowers, courtyard, people working throughout the fortress, historical storytelling style, a cinematic medieval oil painting of a traveller standing near the castle entrance before departure. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 Europe. Large wooden doors open, bright morning outside looking back at the fortress. Emotional farewell atmosphere. A realistic medieval painting of small historical traces inside a castle. High Middle Ages Europe. 1248 worn stone steps, hooks for clothing, candle marks on walls, forgotten pottery, repaired tools, showing ordinary life through objects, a medieval illustrated manuscript-style artwork of ordinary routines creating history. Year 1248, Europe. High Middle Ages period. Workers preparing food, repairing items, caring for animals, walking through halls, small moments preserved through time. A grand medieval oil painting of a 1248 European stone castle beneath fading storm clouds. High Middle Ages era. Traveller leaving through the gate. Workers continuing daily life inside. Wet stones. Peaceful morning atmosphere. Authentic historical artwork. A highly detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages castle after a rainy night. Year 1248, Europe. Ancient fortress standing quietly with warm windows. Fires burning inside. People beginning another day. Memory of the storm remaining. Authentic 13th century historical painting style. A detailed medieval oil painting of a High Middle Ages stone castle entrance in the morning. Year 1248, Europe. A traveller standing outside looking back at the fortress one final time. Damp path, fading storm clouds, tall towers, wooden gates, peaceful farewell atmosphere. Authentic 13th century historical painting style. A realistic medieval painting showing a 1248 European castle transformed from a fortress into a home. High Middle Ages period. Workers, families, and daily life visible around the stone walls. Morning sunlight, wet landscape after rain. Detailed historical artwork. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of a castle after a rainy night. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248 towers covered with soft morning light. Drops falling from roofs. Workers beginning their routines. Peaceful medieval landscape scene. A detailed historical oil painting of repaired medieval castle walls in the High Middle Ages. 1248 Europe. Different stones from different generations, wooden beams, patch sections, craftsman's work visible, showing a living, evolving fortress. Realistic artwork. A realistic medieval painting of small traces of human life inside an ancient castle. High Middle Ages period. Year 1248 Europe. Worn stone steps, repaired doorways, used tools, old pottery, wooden marks, objects telling forgotten stories, historical style, a cinematic medieval oil painting of a traveller walking along a damp path away from a 13th century castle. High Middle Ages Europe. Morning birds, calm wind, wet leaves, fortress behind beneath fading clouds, emotional farewell scene. A detailed medieval painting of a castle courtyard beginning a new day after a storm. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248 workers carrying supplies. Animals moving. breakfast preparations inside, wet stones reflecting sunlight, authentic medieval daily life. A realistic historical painting of a medieval child growing up near a castle, High Middle Ages period. 1248 Europe, child walking familiar paths near stone walls, village life, workers nearby, showing the castle as a childhood home, detailed artwork, a medieval oil painting showing generations of people connected to the same castle landscape. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248 families, workers, craftsmen, and travellers around the fortress, shared memories passing through time, historical storytelling style, a detailed medieval manuscript-style artwork of ordinary medieval people leaving traces behind. High Middle Ages era. 1248 Europe, cooks, craftsmen, servants, guards, and families represented through tools, objects, and daily activities. Authentic historical illustration, a realistic medieval oil painting of a castle guard resting after a night watch. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248, guard leaving the tower at dawn, lantern fading, rain clouds clearing, peaceful completion of duty. Historical artwork, a cinematic medieval painting of medieval cooks and workers continuing their morning routines inside a 1248 stone castle. High Middle Ages period, preparing food, organizing supplies, maintaining the fortress. Warm sunlight entering through windows. A detailed historical medieval painting of a traveller remembering the inside of a castle while walking away. High Middle Ages Europe. 1248. Ghost-like memories of candlelit halls, fireplace warmth, rainy corridors blending with the morning landscape. Emotional artwork. A realistic oil painting of a High Middle Ages castle standing quietly after a storm. Year 1248, Europe. Sunlight breaking through clouds, wet fields, ancient stone walls, peaceful countryside, authentic medieval landscape painting. A medieval illustrated manuscript-style painting of history preserved through simple moments. High Middle Ages period. 1248 Europe, a shared meal, fireplace, resting person, repaired tools, quiet rooms, showing everyday life beyond battles and rulers. A detailed medieval oil painting of a traveller taking a final look back at a 1248 European fortress. High Middle Ages era. Castle towers becoming smaller in the distance. Brightening sky. Soft morning atmosphere. Emotional goodbye scene. A realistic medieval painting of an ancient castle holding memories through stone and wood. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248 walls containing scenes of past life, workers, families, fires, and gatherings subtly reflected. Poetic historical artwork. A cinematic medieval oil painting of a peaceful castle landscape after rain. High Middle Ages period. 1248 Europe. Fresh fields, sunlight, birds flying, damp stone walls, calm morning air, fortress resting beneath the sky. A cozy medieval painting inspired by bedtime history. High Middle Ages Europe. Year 1248. Distant stone castle beneath a calm sky. Gentle rain fading away. Warm windows. Peaceful atmosphere. Soft storytelling artwork style. A grand medieval oil painting of a 1248 European stone castle beneath the morning sky after a gentle storm. High Middle Ages era. Ancient walls holding endless stories. Traveller departing. workers continuing life inside, peaceful final scene, authentic 13th century historical painting style,